We don't come across many people that test out like you did. See, people who test as success accelerators, like you, they don't struggle to take action or to stay focused like the other three. Look, you already know you can produce results. That's not the issue with you. You've proven that you can execute. And you've had some wins, probably some big ones. Momentum, growth, moments where you genuinely felt unstoppable. But if you're honest, because I was one of those, you also know something else. You're still operating below your real capacity. You can kind of feel it, that there's another level in you. But somehow, you've never fully been able to break through it consistently. And that becomes frustrating because the gap is no longer between failure and success. It's between success and high-level impact, influence, freedom, execution that you know that you're capable of. Now listen to me now. This is not a lack of intelligence or ability. It's not a lack of ambition. This is actually a conditioned ceiling. It's a ceiling that you have. And when I first began studying this stuff about 22, 23 years ago, I went deep into behavioral science, high performance psychology, ancient wisdom, and human potential research. And this is what became really clear. Most people never reach their highest level because they continue operating from identity patterns that have been conditioned instead of expanded ones. They execute, but are not fully aligned. They achieve, but still overthink. Boy, did I do a lot of that. They grow, but continue to carry invisible emotional limitations. And eventually, those limitations become kind of an invisible ceiling, not externally, internally. But here's what most people miss. The ceiling is actually learned. It's not permanent, and science backs us up. In a 25-year NASA study, Dr. George Land discovered something extraordinary. When testing adults, he rarely found the creative geniuses that NASA was looking for. So he began testing younger and younger age groups. And here's the mind blower, here's the shocker. 98% of 5-year-olds tested out as creative genius. When the same individuals were tested 25 years later, only 2% tested at that genius level. Not because the capability had disappeared, but because conditioning trained it down through institutions and schools. And renowned behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner, I love Skinner, who rightly is considered at least the equal of Freud and Jung, confirmed the same thing that Land had actually discovered, that behavior is shaped by environment, repetition, and reinforcement. Sounds like school, right? So that vision that you hold, that leadership, that capability, that genius, good news is it didn't disappear. It's actually still in you. Both Land and Skinner concluded the same thing. That genius wasn't lost. It was conditioned down, buried. And they proved it started in school. Why? Well, we were trained to follow instead of learning how to think. We were trained to comply instead of developing our individuality, our gifts, and moving beyond limits. And worst of all, to compete instead of collaborating and creating. And over time, we move further and further away from how we naturally think, create, and operate. But here's the empowering part. You already have an internal automated manifesting mechanism that turns thought into results. That's why the stuff all over social media about learning how to manifest, total nonsense, total BS. You've been manifesting perfectly since your early teens. See, your habits shape your results. So this isn't about learning how to create. It's about learning how to create intentionally. And for the person like you, ready for dynamic compounding acceleration, that changes everything. Why? Because your problem is not lack of action. It's actually an invisible limitation. You can produce results, but you're still operating beneath your true level of alignment and expansion. And that's exactly why the acceleration ceiling, which is what your type has, it's got to be broken. Because the subconscious mind ultimately reinforces whatever identity pattern is repeated most often, even when the pattern is playing smaller or overthinking or unconsciously limiting your own ability to expand. Until that acceleration ceiling is, I would best say, interrupted, you will continue confusing movement with true transformation.
I would start strong every time, but I could never maintain it. This finally changed that.
Now here's where it gets really fascinating and everything shifts. Across ancient wisdom traditions going back over 5,000 years, there's a recurring symbolic idea that appears across all cultures and all continents, the jinn, Jinn. One of the earliest recorded descriptions of a wish-granting force, sort of a trickster god, and over time, that same symbolic pattern evolved Jinn into genie in a bottle, and eventually the story of Aladdin and the magic lamp. Now look, stay with me here. I know you're all about business. But because this was never about magic, and this isn't some woo-woo stuff or fairy tales for children, the reason the story survived for thousands of years across all civilizations and all continents is because it was always a metaphor for the remarkable subconscious mind. In other words, the creative genius that Dr. Land discovered that we all have. A force beneath conscious thought that responds to repeated instruction. And the ancients understood something that modern psychology now confirms. And of course, they're trying to take credit for all of it by calling it neuroscience. Anyway, the subconscious mind ultimately reinforces whatever pattern is repeated the most, even when the pattern is self-sabotage. And until that pattern is interrupted, big pause there, right? People continue repeating emotional cycles, behavioral loops, identity patterns, and they do it without realizing that they're being conditioned by the repetition of their own thoughts, same thoughts. And that's exactly why the ancients didn't just leave us stories. They left us the instructions. What are the instructions? Abracadabra. What popped into your head? Why am I listening to this? A magician, a magic word? Maybe the great song by Steve Miller. This was never about magic. Abracadabra were the instructions to train the creative genius that each of us has. Here's what it really means, dating back to 2450 BC. It's two words. Abra, I create. Cadabra, as I speak. Meaning your internal dialogue is constantly programming your subconscious direction. And that subconscious direction does what? You already know this. It shapes your behavior. It shapes your habits. In your case, your leadership, and ultimately the results of getting to the next level. Now, inside the best-selling book, Standing Tall, now published in 3 languages, surprised me, you'll discover 7 ancient verities. Verity means truth. Truth does not change. And when you align with truth, expansion becomes inevitable. Now, these ancient verities are not motivational ideas. They are conditioning interrupters, patterns of thought and action designed to interrupt that acceleration ceiling, replace destructive conditioning, and retrain the subconscious mind toward aligned leadership, exponential execution. See, repetition and reinforcement created the old pattern, and repetition and positive reinforcement is actually what rewires it. And for the person ready for dynamic compounding acceleration, that rewiring, it changes everything. Why? Because acceleration is not about doing more. It's about removing the internal resistance, that invisible hesitation, identity ceilings, and the subconscious limitation patterns. That's why Verity 3 becomes so powerful. Verity 3 is release all limiting beliefs. See if this resonates with you. You see, most limitations are not external. They're unconscious identity patterns, conditioning, blind spots, and invisible mental ceilings. Some are obvious. Others are so deeply conditioned, people mistake them for personality, but they're not. One of the greatest truths that you'll discover is that whatever the mind continually identifies with, it actually strengthens. Over time, those patterns quietly limit expansion, leadership, wealth, and execution. That's why release becomes essential. Not denial, but release. Because your mind, obviously since you're already a producer, it's not broken. It's extraordinarily powerful. But most people were never taught how to direct that power intentionally. And through the law substitution in that verity, you begin replacing limitation with aligned intention and focused execution. Because the mind cannot hold 2 dominant thoughts at the same time. And when limitation kind of dissolves, focus intensifies. Execution, it sharpens. Acceleration, it really does compound. And then we're on to Verity 4. Now, we work all 7 verities, but Verity 4 is action-focused and attachment-free. You stop overthinking. You stop over-attaching. You execute cleanly. Because true acceleration happens when execution, listen to me now, becomes detached from emotional interference. No longer controlled by opinions. No longer slowed by perfectionism. And no longer trapped by hesitation. Because acceleration compounds when aligned action becomes what? Consistent.
This helped me stop overthinking and stay consistent long enough to get real results.
Now, here's what makes this experience of working with us transformational instead of informational. Once you get started, you'll actually complete a short assessment. Now, that allows us to generate a full color code profile on you. And through that profile, you'll discover your core motive. Yeah, I'm hesitating here for a reason. I want you to get it. Not just how you behave, but why you behave that way. Because most personality systems measure behavior. They're fine, but color code goes way deeper. It measures core motive, the internal driver behind your leadership. And in your case, more important, your communication, your decision making, your stress patterns. Boy, did I have those. Your relationships, and the way you naturally accelerate results. Now, most people spend years trying to improve performance without ever understanding what is actually driving it. And once we understand your motive, everything becomes really precise. Communication improves. That improves your leadership. That improves execution of yourself and your teammates. And your people finally begin understanding your visionary thinking that you may have struggled in the past to articulate, or maybe even your whole life. And this is where most programs fall short. They give you information, but no personalization. That's why when you enroll, you also receive a private one-on-one session with me, so we can review your results together and go through your full 27-page color code breakdown. Identify your strengths, see your blind spots, acceleration patterns, and build a customized acceleration plan based on your type, your goals, your lifestyle, your business, your leadership challenges, your opportunities, and of course, all in the context of where you are in your life, the season of your life right now. Because acceleration happens faster when the strategy is built specifically for you. Not generic advice, sort of a personalized roadmap. For over 15 years, we've been doing this successfully, and we've helped more than 4,000 people. This is not theory to us. Defined, refined, perfected, and tested, and now it's proven. Now, inside the Standing Tall members area, you receive an instant download of that best-selling book, your 7 Ancient Verity workbook, so we can keep reinforcing what you're learning, your color code profile, your behavior pattern breakdown, you're going to love that, your acceleration and execution framework. Now, once you fill out a short survey so that we understand your hopes and goals a little better, you'll have access to my calendar for your one-on-one appointment and structured guidance from that point on to move from hidden limitation into aligned acceleration and exponential execution. Plus, you're supported through 2 live Zoom mastermind sessions every month. In other words, you're not going to be doing this alone, because Napoleon Hill of Thinking Grow Rich fame said, and it's true, no one achieves lasting success without a mastermind alliance. Now, this matters enormously for high performers, because most successful people in the world, they don't accelerate alone. They leverage other minds, investigate other perspectives, other strengths. And twice a month, we come together on a live Zoom to sharpen thinking, to increase clarity, to strengthen execution, and accelerate aligned growth. Because, and you know this as a leader already, accountability compounds performance. There's no question about it. Now let's be clear. This is not motivation. This is identity level acceleration. If you're ready to remove the internal ceiling, click below, go through Standing Tall, get your color code profile, get your one-on-one appointment set up so you can begin to immediately operating at a level you already know that you're capable of. You do not reach the next level by doing more of the same. You reach it by becoming more aligned with your core motive and these principles, more focused, more intentional. And once that happens, acceleration stops feeling forced and starts compounding naturally. So let's do this. Hit the link. I'll see you on the inside. Peace be the journey.